Fantastic. So welcome, Alissa. Thank you for being here with me today.
Oh, hi. It's so nice to meet you.
Yeah. And first off, congratulations on winning the $3,000 Tricky Time contest.
Thank you. It's quite a prize. Not many contests do that.
No, and not exclusively for new writers either. Most prizes with a significant amount like that tend to have a lot of professionals and often exclude you if you're unpublished. So that's why I'm trying to do this just for new writers. So how are you feeling now that you won? You saw your story in the magazine?
It was very exciting. It was the second time that I submitted to Elegant Literature. The first time I got an honorable mention, which I have to tell you was thrilling. Just the honorable mention, just seeing my name in there. I thought that was as good as it was going to get. And I was just going to keep submitting. And I couldn't believe it the following month. I saw my name in there and I thought, okay, that's great. I got my story published. And then I'm looking through it with my husband and we see contest winner. And I was like, no. So it was very thrilling for me.
That's fantastic. That's a great story. So is this, I guess this is one of your first publications then?
Absolutely it is. Yes. I have a kind of a roundabout way how I came to writing. I'm a classically trained pastry chef and I used to own a bakery.
What was the name of your bakery?
It was called Teaspoon Bake Shop.
Teaspoon Bake Shop.
And it was in Queens in New York City. And I did that for a number of years. And then I had 2 children and it really wasn't a sustainable thing to do anymore. And then I was actually just making my way into teaching cooking and baking. And then the pandemic happened and cooking school shut down. So I was at home and I found myself with time and ideas and I thought, why not? But I wasn't showing it to anybody and I didn't really think anything of it. And I actually found your contest on Instagram. And so I thought, why not? Let's try it.
That's fantastic. And so had you ever thought about writing before? Has it been something that you'd always liked to do, but never got around to doing? Or is this totally brand new, start of the pandemic? You said, let's give it a try.
As a kid, I wrote poetry and I wrote stories, but I'm really talking as a kid, like in grade school. And I really didn't pursue it later on. I thought about taking a creative writing class in college. And I heard that the professor was really tough and critical and I chickened out and I took myself out of the class. And
oh, no.
I berated myself for years afterward. I thought, well, why did I do that? Why did I take myself out of that class? And so it's getting a second chance.
And here you are having won a contest in one of your early tries. So that's fantastic. I really enjoyed your story. For those of you, if you're new to this or haven't read the issue, it's called Kimchi Pancakes. You can read it for free. And why don't, Alissa, you tell us about the story?
Oh, thank you so much, by the way, for what you said about it and for what you said in your comments. It was surreal that somebody read it and then analyzed it and commented on it. So that was, and I really felt you got what I was trying to do.
I always worry about that with my comments. I'm putting it out there into the world for everyone to see before having spoken with you. And I'm going, I hope I got it right. I hope I didn't just totally miss the point of the story and say the wrong thing. So I'm really happy to hear you say that. Thank you.
No, you really did. And it's clear that you gave it a close read and I appreciate it. And I can't believe it. That's lovely. So Troy is a 13-year-old boy who realizes that he has the ability to time travel with coins. And that's what he does. Now, these are actual coins, dimes, nickels, pennies, quarters. He can't go forward, obviously. He can only go backward because he has to use money that's already been minted. And
it doesn't occur to him to use novelty coins from 2025 or something.
Right. No. And also this is taking place in 1995 and the world is very different then. And he doesn't have access to the things that we do now. And he likes to go on adventures. He likes to collect sports memorabilia. The one thing that he doesn't like to do is see his family. He really doesn't like to go back and see his mom who has passed. And he lives with his dad and his brother. And his dad cooks him breakfast and his dad makes things like French toast, but his mom always had kimchi pancakes for breakfast. And I don't know how much am I supposed to say.
You don't have to go through the whole story, but just what it's about. What I'm really curious to know actually is where your inspiration came for it. Because is that, I'm guessing Troy was half Korean, half maybe Caucasian or something, based on the French toast. Does that have anything to do with you or your family? Have you an experience with that? Were any of these characters based on real people, or where did the story come from?
First of all, it came from the prompts. The prompts are excellent. I enjoy them, and I'm going to miss doing them. I actually checked to see what this month was, because I was going to get started on it.
But you can still use the prompt. You just can't submit it to us. You can submit it to someone else if it fits.
Yes. No, I did, because I read it. This month is a good one. And I'm sorry, what was it?
I'm really curious about the inspiration behind sort of Troy and his traveling back to the past to meet his mother and questionably save her. And
so the prompt. So as soon as you said a coin, I immediately, coins have years, and it just felt very obvious to me that he would go back to this year. He's not based on anybody. I wanted it to be two very distinct breakfasts, French toast and something else very distinct.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of the difference between French toast and like Cheerios, or French toast and pancakes, that just wasn't going to do it. And I don't know if you've had kimchi pancakes.
I want to now. They sound good.
You should. They're delicious. It's not my traditional breakfast, but they're delicious.
And there's no food in your family or anything that you've pulled this from, or?
There's not, no. I grew up in Queens, which is very diverse, and I was exposed to a lot of different food living there. And I spent my entire adult life in the food industry. And so I'm always thinking about food. Actually, my first submission to your contest was also about food. So it's just always top of mind. And
that's really funny. That's really funny to say that. If you've watched all the past interviews, which I wouldn't expect because there are 5 or 6 of them now, hour long. I think in 3 of them, this topic of food and food writing has come up. And I've mentioned George R.R. Martin's The Game of Thrones, the cookbook. I have it on my shelf. And I've talked about how some of his critics say that his short stories read like menus because it's food. And it's just, I don't know what it is. Something about the prompts is bringing these writers that love to write about food as well. It's the 3rd time. So this is great.
Food brings people together. It's a communal experience. And it's a cultural experience. And I love food. I love to make it. I love to eat it. And apparently I love to write about it. So. Did
you make kimchi pancakes while you were writing or editing the story to get in the mindset?
I didn't. I should have. I didn't. I much prefer now when other people make me food and I'm eating it.
That's how I am as well. Cooking isn't, I can cook and I enjoy eating the food, but the process of the cooking, it doesn't do it for me. But fortunately, my partner loves cooking. So it's
as long as someone in your house does. I like the cooking part, the dishes part. I'm over it.
I can understand.
Yeah.
So it was really just the prompt and the coins and kind of the first thing that prompted into your mind. And then this idea of the different breakfasts that kind of got you rolling on this story.
Yeah, and both my kids actually collect cards. They like to go to a hobby store and buy them, all different kinds of cards.
Now, is that baseball cards and more like the Yu-Gi-Oh! And the Magic the Gathering, or?
So definitely Pokemon is part of it, but baseball, basketball, all those sports cards are a really big thing now, like with that whole age group. And I guess that was on my mind as well. And I thought about it. And I actually went through a couple different drafts of the story. Things happened a little bit differently every time. Yeah. And because it's only 2,000 words, something had to go. I would go through it and say, all right, this isn't going to make it in.
Yeah. Yeah. How much of Troy is based on your own children, or are they the same age at all, or?
No, my kids are almost 6 and almost 8.
A little younger. Yeah.
They're younger. No, I do love that age. I got the opportunity to work with kids last summer who were around that age. And I just think it's great because you're exploring the world at that time, but there's still that magical quality and the innocence. You're still getting to be a kid. Even
You've
Troy.
Got that confidence where you're safe, nothing can happen to you. And you have that bravery of being able to talk to strangers and not fear any consequences or anything like that. And that's what I really liked. That it wasn't focused on, but you mentioned you met a stranger on a train who gave him a card. He wasn't worried about that. He's traveling as a 13-year-old kid, traveling to different times, vastly different eras with totally different dangers in a lot of senses. And he's just not at all concerned about it. He's just having fun and it's working out for him. I thought that was really well done, slipped in there.
Thank you. Yeah, he doesn't think about, because most kids don't. If you are exposed to kids in your life, you'll know that they don't think about the bad things and the dangers, and they don't understand. They'll see me say hi to somebody on the street and then they want to know why they can't talk to a stranger. Yeah, there's a lot of bravery in being a kid.
What is there anything special about 1973 or the 70s in general that made you choose that era? Was it just the timeline lined up with the story, or do you have a special affinity for tight pants and back alley parties?
So I had to do a little bit of math when I was figuring this all out. Yeah, so that was tough. So I was like, okay, it's 1995, and Troy was this old when she passed, and so what age would she be when he went back? So I was handwriting down the years actually, and doing the math by hand and trying to figure it out. There is no significance. It's just that I wanted her to be young. I didn't want her to be too young. When you're 23, you would be out with friends and having a good time. And her father's pharmacy is nearby, so she's doing it under his nose, in his backyard type of thing. And so she's just young, and she's just having a good time, but she's not too young. She's not Troy's contemporary. And then I actually had to go and search what was going on in 1973 because I wasn't born until 1983. I did have to figure out. So I was Googling what big events, like what New York City So I saw that Carole King had a free concert in the city at that time. I was trying to figure out who was in the World Series, who was playing what. And when I saw the Oakland A's, I was like, are they in Oakland at this particular game? Like, I had to make sure that they were in New York, and just Google makes things very easy now.
That's for sure. You don't have to go to the library and pull out the history books. I thought that was really cool because those references were, to me, so specific that it felt the author behind the story really knew, was almost drawing from personal experience or knew it. But it's very interesting to find out that you were just researching. It's almost purely speculation, speculative story here. It's really, personal history. So 1973, you settled on tight pants and acid.
Yeah, so tight pants. I was thinking about, I just had this image of a creepy guy who would just be standing around doing drugs and offer this poor kid some drugs.
Like a 13-year-old boy, and the guy's like, we've got Tab, you want a beer? You want to hang out and party with us? It's man, but
it's the early 70s. So you could argue that wasn't, I guess, that strange. And maybe Troy looks a little older for his age. I'm not sure. I had a couple of people read the story, and they weren't sure if this drug use was ongoing with Kiwan, and was this something that
did it lead to her?
Right. Like,
you didn't mention, I don't think you mentioned whatever happened to cause her death. Did you in the story? I can't remember.
No. Yeah. I didn't mention, and I didn't intend for it to be sinister, really. Like,
I didn't get that either. Yeah, when I was reading it, I didn't go, oh, this party girl turned into 9 years later, it had 2 kids and a husband who makes French toast for breakfast. I didn't go, she's still doing drugs and having a hard time. I figured it was a car crash or something, some sort of accident, basically.
Yeah, I didn't think that far, but I certainly wasn't imagining her being some kind of like party girl.
Just in that specific time. That scene had the writing in that scene made me laugh a couple of times with his grip was as tight as his pants is probably one of my, it's a throwaway line. And it's one of my favorite from the stories. It just made me laugh out loud. It was.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I love the idea of not even giving him a name, because Troy doesn't even care what his name is.
No, he's not focused on that.
Right. He just wants to see him. And when we see characters like that every day in our lives, somebody who has like a funny defining feature about them, and then you just call them by that feature.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to get into a little bit of spoiler territory for anyone who is watching this and hasn't read the story, because now I want to talk about the ending. So go read the story, pause it here if you haven't, because I'm curious to know, Alissa, if you have a firm idea if it's his mom downstairs making kimchi pancakes when he wakes up, because you did slip in earlier that they only have it when the grandma comes over nowadays. So I was thinking it's very possible, because you put it in there and you know how every word matters, every line matters, that you might not have included that if you wanted us to really believe that it was the mother come home. But I thought maybe it's possible that it's just the grandma, but it's possible she's home. So I want to know if you have an answer to that.
So I left it vague deliberately. I'm an avid reader myself, and I also like when those things are left up to the reader. But I'm an optimist as a person. I'm rooting for Troy and Iwan to have a reunion. I think that's a nice thing, but I'm not going to say that they do or that they don't. And I definitely think it's up to what you want to believe. I think it's pretty open-ended that way. And maybe his dad decided to give Kimchi Pancakes a try for the day. Maybe Troy's just being hopeful and he's not really smelling anything at all. Or maybe she's downstairs in the kitchen. I think those are all plausible things.
Yeah, and I really like that you ended that story with that vagueness, because sometimes when the answer is just given to you, it can be powerful. But I think in this case, it's like a note of hope and possibility, but not firm, because he is a child. He is hopeful, but it doesn't mean the world always works like that, given that there's time travel in this world, which is real, which is what I thought that was cool. The crumbs in his bed with the cookie from things that aren't being made before is like, this isn't just a boy dreaming when he goes to bed that he's having adventures. It's real time travel. So this is really possible. And I'm rooting for his mom coming home too, although I like to understand things. I'm a big fan of hard science fiction when they have the explanations for so time travel movies and things, when they really get into how it works. I find that a lot of fun. So my mind goes, so well, what happened to the last? I had to do the math too when I was thinking of this, writing the thing. I figured out what year we were in based on the ages and all of that. And I have to wonder what happens to her memories. Does she come back as she was? Does she still think it's 8 years earlier? But it doesn't matter. I hope she's home.
I had read Stephen King's 11/22/63 last fall. And so that's a book about JFK's assassination. And it's about a character who goes back in time to kill the killer, basically, so that JFK lives and he can change the course of American history. And I liked the book so much that I listened to a podcast with him afterward. And he talks about how he doesn't get too bogged down in the mechanics of time travel, because that's really not him. That's not how his brain works. And I decided to give myself the same permission and to not really include too many specifics about the time travel, because to be honest, they don't really interest me. I just wanted to be able to do these things. And again, it's only 2,000 words. So I can either explain time travel or I can tell a story. So I made a choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it was the right choice here, because, and especially with 2,000 words, explaining time travel is very difficult thing to do, especially when it doesn't exist. And so you're either going to be rehashing concepts that the reader probably is aware of already, because you just have to, or you're going to be explaining your entirely new method of time travel instead of telling a story. So it can be a tough choice to do that. But I think it really worked out well. And especially because your story was through the eyes of a 13-year-old who isn't necessarily going to be exposed to that and have any idea how, even if you did know how the mechanics worked and felt like explaining it, it would be very difficult to do through a 13-year-old who has very limited understanding and experience with time travel pop culture. So I think it is certainly, for the story, it was the right choice. And it sounds like for you personally writing, it only makes sense.
Right. Well, I think you have to suspend your disbelief when you're reading. You can make that agreement with the author when you you enter in, when you start something new, and you have to be like, okay, I'm going to go on this ride with you.
Yeah, exactly. What's your writing process like? When you came up with the idea, how do you go about? Are you outlining? Are you just sitting down and going, coins? All right. So tell me about that.
So for this one, the idea came pretty quickly. I heard coin, I thought year, and I thought, wow, this is such an obvious, I bet everybody writes this story, because I just felt like it was so obvious to put years and coins together and time travel. Typically the process is I get an idea and I just start making notes, typically on my phone, because I'm out. I go to pick up my kids from school, and if I have a half an hour in the school parking lot, I take my phone out and I just start making a bunch of notes. And then when I have some real time later on, I'll sit down and try to make everything look a little bit more cohesive. I really just give myself permission to write whatever I want. And I don't get worried about making things too perfect. I just write it out, and I know that I can go back later and do it. I don't have a ton of time, so I can't really be too precious about things. And I have to just say, okay, at some point, this is it. I can file it away and keep working on it forever and ever, or I can just hit send.
Yeah. That's a perfect. And my dad always had the expression, perfect is the enemy of good. Just Get it done, make
I
it
love
good
that.
enough and send it off. And I'm sorry, did you say that you were handwriting this in your car in the school parking lot? Is that
So I have my phone. I have a
on your phone?
notebook that I do take notes in, but I also had my phone. And so I would just take notes. Yeah, very quick. I'd either be scratching things, which is a dangerous thing to do because then you go back and you look at your notes and you're like, oh no, I don't know what I wrote at all. Even in notes on my phone, sometimes I'm going so fast and it corrects words for you
Mhm.
and you don't want it to. And you go back and you're like, oh no, that's not what was the idea? What did I mean?
So do you actually write the story on your computer, maybe after the kids go to bed or something? Or are you writing it on your phone while you're taking notes
Yeah,
in
so
any moment that you
both.
can?
Yeah,
Oh,
it's both. It's whenever I can. So if a lot of times I know this happens to people, you get an idea when you're in the shower and you just have to like keep repeating it to yourself over and over again so you don't forget anything because you can't touch anything, you're all wet, and then you race out and you try to write or type things down as quickly as you
Mhm.
can. And you don't want to lose that feeling, like you don't want to wait too long, I find, because
Yeah.
you take yourself out of the
Like
story.
waking up from a really vivid dream that gives you an idea for the
Exactly.
story. You have 10 minutes before it starts to fade away. You got to leap out of bed. There's a great product, I think, to write in the shower. It's like a notepad that it's waterproof,
No.
and you like suction cup it to the wall or whatever, and then you can write your notes. So it's for taking down your shower thoughts because we get them so often in the shower because the water actually puts our brain into a state of almost trance. It like heightens, I think it's theta waves, I forget, but that's why you get all these great ideas in the shower because your brain's in this like state of heightened ability to do that. So get one of those, put in the shower, or I have a waterproof phone. I don't actually do this, but I could because my phone's waterproof. I keep it in the shower to take notes. But a
What a
notepad, one of
great
the
idea.
yeah.
That's genius. Yes, I need that. I need that because I find that I'm constantly getting ideas in the shower and then I just like I'm repeating it over and over again. I think,
Mhm.
don't forget this, and
Well, you
don't
can
forget.
move on to the next idea if you write it down.
Yeah,
More
no,
than one
that's I
idea
will.
per shower. That's great. I usually ask people that I interview later on, you might have seen, is what is a useful product that you've bought that really helps? And I think even though you haven't got this yet, this might be the answer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think another useful thing really is, I guess I'm old fashioned, but I really like a notebook. I went
Mhm.
to Home Goods and I just bought this pretty notebook and I really wanted it to have folders in it so
Oh yeah.
that if I wrote something down on another piece of paper, I could then stick it in my notebook and refer to it. So I still really just like using a pen and notebook.
Pen and paper. And there is something your mind remembers things better when you handwrite them down as well, rather
Sure.
than typing things in. I think for most people anyway. I'm not sure if it's across the board. So after you've written it on your phone, you've written it on your computer. Are you using Google Docs or something that sends it back and forth, syncs it
Yes.
so you can?
Google
And then
Docs.
once you finish your first draft, what's your project? Do you edit on your phone as well? And do you stolen moments picking up your
Yeah.
kids from school, or you just do that on a computer? How does that work?
Yeah, so I also just edit wherever I can, whenever I get a moment. If I'm picking somebody up from an activity or a play date and I have a couple minutes and I'm looking it over, and I think it's always good to close it and walk away and come back because your first pass, at least for me, is never the final. I
Mhm.
cut out whole chunks all the time. Sometimes all you get is like a great sentence. And you're
Mhm.
like, this sentence was great, and the rest of it is garbage. And
That's going to happen when you just give yourself permission to write whatever you want. You don't have too much of a plan going, and you're going to find that happens sometimes. And that's, I mean, perfectly okay. That's your process, but you're going to have to, yeah, edit it out. Is that challenging editing it on your phone? Like in brief, a lot of people need to sit down and get into it, but you're really taking 5 minutes while you're waiting for the kids to come out of school or something like that, and you're on your phone. Is that a challenge for you?
So yes, it's challenging. And sometimes I think, oh, wow, I really wish I had these huge chunks of time so I could sit down and really craft and go over 100 times. But the truth is, if I had all the time, I don't think I would use it. I think I'm smarter with my time because I have less of it. And time is just so much more important to me now. Uh, because I don't have that much of it. When I do get it and I think, all right, look, I only have 15 or 30 minutes. I have to make it count. So I have to really be in this moment. I have to be thinking about it and I do well with deadlines as well. I need accountability for all aspects of my life. And this seems to work. Sometimes I get up earlier than everybody in my house. I'm an early riser. That's what made me a good baker.
Yeah.
It's nice. I sometimes I wake up, it's 5 in the morning and the house is quiet. And I'm like, okay, this is the time. Don't waste it. Don't even spend, if I spend 20 minutes on Instagram, then you never know who's going to wake up and start chirping and needing something. You have to hit the ground running.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's great. What was my next question? Oh, are you looking, because this is a fairly new hobby. Well, I don't know if I'd call it a hobby exactly now. You're getting paid. You start on the road to professional. But is this, and it's only been since the beginning of the pandemic, right, that you started doing this again. Do you have any goals in the long term? Are you hoping to work on novels, like a novel length work? Do you enjoy just writing short stories? What's your kind of expectation for what your plan is?
Yes to all of that. I realized that I really love it. I love fiction in particular. I really like just making up totally fictional characters in crazy circumstances, people that are nothing like me. And I just like being immersed in another place. That's what made it so fun to write, especially during the heart of the pandemic when we all just wanted to be anywhere else. And that's why I like to read as well. I like to get lost in other people's stories. So yes, I do. I've written, so short stories I find are great because it's a little bit lower stakes. So again, with the time constraint, I feel like if I have this great idea, I'll put into short story and see what happens with it. But I do have novel ideas, and there is something that I've been working on for the past few months, and it's fun. It's just something that, like, when I find myself with time, I go back to it. Although with the contest the past couple of months, it's been a distraction because then I'm like putting all my time into those.
Yeah.
And then that's my own form of procrastination.
Yeah, but it paid off. So I don't call it procrastination exactly. It's definitely a revenue generating activity for you now. Do you want to tell us about the longer piece that you're working on? Is that top secret, or do you talk about things?
For sure. So it's a YA novel, and it's set in the 90s as well. So I don't know if you would exactly call that historical fiction. I don't know. That's like a little scary.
That's got to be a gray line between contemporary and historical. Now it's radio stations. They say playing 70s, 80s, 90s to now, but it's 90s to now is more than all three of those combined pretty much at this point, almost. So
I know it's wild to think about it. And it's set in a time before social media and cell phones and texting. So I feel like there's a lot you can do with the story there. It's called Dear Mark, Love Melanie. And it's about friendship and first love and unrequited love. And just, even though it is set in the 90s, I feel like teenagers always experience the same things, no matter what decade you're living in.
Mm-hmm. And is there a speculative element to the story at all, or is it just contemporary or literary fiction?
Yeah, I would say it's a contemporary literary. There's really no kind of fantasy element there.
Yeah, exactly.
No, nothing like that. Although I guess if I tried to infuse that would, totally change the story, but
sure.
That could be, yeah.
Do you normally like to write, because obviously you've written for A Tricky Time anyway, this was a very supernatural story about time travel science fiction. Do you prefer to write speculative fantasy, science fiction, things like that? Or do you prefer the sort of more grounded in reality, or really just a mix of both, whatever you're feeling like?
Yeah, so I don't know if this is because I'm a newish writer, but I like writing everything. I do. If I get an idea for something, it's so fun and it's new and it's different. And that's my personality. If I go into an ice cream shop, like I never get the same flavor twice. So I feel that way about writing. I don't know how you have authors that write in the same genre for decades, because I don't think I could ever do that. There's so much. I love like thrillers, and I love political dramas and contemporary literary. I love historical fiction. There's so much, there just isn't enough time.
Yeah, I can understand that completely. And maybe as you write more and some years go by, you may find a genre that you prefer above other ones, or you might not, because jumping around really, it's almost challenging. It keeps things novel and can really keep you, from getting bored, I would imagine. So if that's something that you like, I think that's great.
Yeah, for sure.
How far along are you in to Mark, Love Melanie?
Dear Mark, Love Melanie.
Dear Mark, Love Melanie.
Yeah, so I guess I'm like between 30 and 40,000 words, and right, yeah. And so what I did was, it started with this scene that I had in my head, and so I wrote the scene, and then I wrote a couple more scenes, and then I thought I better start the story. So I started it, and I started writing it. And then that thing that kind of happens when you get to the middle and you're like, now I don't really know what's going to happen in here. So I jumped ahead and I wrote the whole ending, and I know how
Oh, okay.
everything wraps up and finishes. So now I just have to get back to the middle and figure out what happens to these people and how did we get from the beginning to the end.
Are you still excited about that? Because I think what happens to a lot of authors is once they get those beginning and middle, it's connecting the two, but now they know how the story ends. They might get a little bit bored or frustrated trying to puzzle it together. And do you find that happening, or are you just still ready to go?
So I do really like this work, and I find myself thinking about it a lot. Again, like if I get a short story idea or if I see like a contest prompt or something, and I do get distracted, and I let myself get distracted, and then I'm still letting myself work on something else if I want to. But it was like the first idea, the first thing that I really started writing. So even when I go back and I reread something from it, sometimes even just reading my own writing from that time, because it was one of the first things, and you cringe and you're like, oh,
Get better over time. Even if you just sat down to write one novel and you started at zero and wrote straight through to 90,000, when you finish, you're going to look back at the beginning and go, I'm better than I was 100,000 words ago. And
yeah. So I don't know how anybody gets novels completed. It's amazing. I'm in awe of all of those authors. Like I said, I love to read, and sometimes you'll just be reading something and you're like, wow, how did they come up with this? And how did they get all the way through this?
yeah, perfect is the enemy of good. You gotta say it's enough is enough at one point and send it out.
For sure.
I don't want to know too much more about Dear Mark, Love Melanie, because I want to read it when it comes out. So now you have to finish it because I'll be waiting for it. You have one pre-ordered already. Don't want to spoil it. But you said that was one of the first ones you started working on. So there's this way back a year or two ago now.
Yeah, I guess maybe less than that. Yeah, and again, working with teenagers last summer spurred me on, and listening to the way that they talk, and then you just remember and you think about things.
That was another question I had, is how do you go about creating your characters? Because Troy, in the short story that you won this contest with, Kimchi Pancakes, wasn't, you said, based on anyone exactly, maybe those teenagers a little bit, but is that typical of you? Is you're just mashing together things, or how do you go about creating the core characters in your stories? Mark and Melanie.
So I guess it depends on, like who the character is. They might just be like a combination of a lot of people that you meet. Like you meet a certain type of person. If I'm writing a mom character, I know a lot of different moms now, and I know a lot of, the way that they speak. And so I'll just put a few things together. And if something really interesting or funny stands out to me, that instance gets put in, but it's not necessarily like their personality. Like I've never written anything where I've thought, oh yeah, this is this person.
Yeah, this is my friend Carrie. She's in this book for sure.
Right.
Like anytime I want to know what this character does, I just think, what would Carrie do? Yeah. So none of that.
No, definitely not. No, I don't recognize anybody. Everyone's just a combination of people that you meet. And sometimes you just overhear something, somebody says something that's like very interesting. And it's more like a type of person that you're writing, more so than that person exactly.
Yeah, you can get a lot of very interesting sort of character ideas and dialogue options by just going out for lunch by yourself to a restaurant or a bar and just listening to the conversations around, or sitting on a park bench and people watching. Basically, wherever you do that is a great source for writers. And if you're taking notes, it's research and not just watching people.
Right, not just creepy because you're working.
You're working. It's important. Study. Exactly. So what kind of future do you envision with you and writing? You're working on this novel and you're snatching the time that you can when you can because you're a busy mom, but in a year from now, what are you looking for to have accomplished with the writing? And 5 years from now, is this a career that you might want to explore if you can continue getting published, or you go back to baking once things open up? What is your plan or your hope?
Yeah, so I do really love writing, and I've been thinking about it more and more recently, and I would love for it to be something. I keep a list on my phone of all the places that I could possibly submit. And actually, it's really cool because now I have been published somewhere. Maybe somebody else would be interested in reading something of mine because I can point to this thing on my resume and say, somebody else thought it was worth reading.
Somebody liked it.
So maybe somebody else would.
Yeah, and that's my hope for what I'm doing here with Elegant Literature, is that new authors can use it as a stepping stone to do something like that, because it is a weird business model now. You're a loyal customer now, but now you're not allowed to submit anymore. But it's my hope that you're going off to find success with your writing in other places. So
No, it's very great. It's really a very unique thing. And it's unique that it's like a fiction contest as well, because any place that I've looked to submit, they're looking more for nonfiction and personal essay.
memoirs, poetry, a lot of things like that.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
I do love poetry, but I have no interest in writing about myself. So it makes it difficult to find things. So
Mhm.
that's why, this one was really
A lot of the fiction contests are books as well. Like they're judging novels and giving awards to novels. The short story ones often aren't such high prizes. And I've seen things that have, it's $10 to enter your story, a short story. And each time you want to enter the short story, a new story, it's another $10. And the grand prize is like $200. And I'm like, I
right.
don't understand. And that's not going to bring you prestige either, exactly, like, in my opinion. So what I wanted to do with this is have an award that is significant, that you can point to on your resume and say, this is a significant award. The story won me $3,000 as a new writer. And hopefully that will give you some more success and make it easier to win, because you're not competing against the Stephen Kings of the world.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So I'm really glad that this worked for you. And I'm sorry, I forgot what you said, and I just want to go back to it. Would you be a full-time novelist if that ended up being what happened? If you finish Dear Mark, Love Melody and it got published and it got signed with an agent, would you consider that path?
Oh, absolutely. That's what I hope. And my hope is that I finish it and that I take the time to revise it and then have beta readers and revise it again. And then I would love to start that whole looking for an agent process. And I have written also a bunch of short stories. I'd always wanted to publish, not always, I recently wanted to publish a short story collection. I know those are a little bit more difficult. There's less of a market for that, but I enjoy them. I enjoy reading short stories.
Yeah,
As much
and
as anyone.
it's good, especially for a lot of people don't have the time to submit or to read a full novel now, or at least it's more challenging if you're going to spend 5 minutes in your car reading half a chapter, rather than you could spend the same 5 minutes reading one story out of a collection, and it's like a nice bite on your commute or while you wait. What a lot of people do, I think, is standard practice, is with a short story collection like that, you choose one of the best ones in your opinion and give it for free, and as a little teaser for the rest of the collection, so this people can get an idea of what it is in there, and purchase the rest of it, which
That's a
has
great
always made
idea.
sense to me. But it's a smaller market than novels for sure, because novels have always been the bigger thing. But I think that there's definitely people that like to read short stories. I do. I read hundreds of them. So that's great. And I think that's amazing what you're doing. And I really hope that you have success with it. And I think that you just persevere. And
Thank you so much. It's quite an amazing thing to just meet somebody on an online contest like this and have them be a champion so right away. It's really it's wonderful. It's just like a very nice thing. And I really appreciate it.
I'm glad. It's what I'm here to do. It's what I like. I want to champion the new authors. And I love Kimchi Pancakes. It was a great story. And obviously you read my comments on it. I'm a fan of it. So I'll be looking forward to reading your book when it comes out. So now you have to finish it. Like I said, you've already got
Yes, no, I do. And the thing is, like, I have so many ideas and I don't even, I find myself and I make notes on a couple of little things. And I think even just my last submission, which I know now, I mean, because I submitted it before I found out about Kimchi Pancakes. So you guys will be getting that. But that
I
was
have to
something.
remove that from the submission list. That's right. So I can't, because I judge them blind. So I'd have no idea. I might pick it again. And that would be, I got to get rid of that before that happens.
Yeah, I like that one. And that was something that I thought that too. I was like, oh, that could be a longer piece as well. So yeah.
That's the great thing about short stories, is so often they're just snippets of a longer story. And even when you're done submitting them to contests or around to magazines, you might want to expand that and turn it into a novel. The problem is if you're always writing short stories, you're going to have so many novels you want to work on. You have to choose. It's hard choices sometimes. Yeah. And you can use that one that you really like and submit it to other magazines that you think it might fit in, because there's so many magazines out there that are looking for work.
Yeah, and I'm excited to do that. And it's nice because we know something like this happens and you feel like you're like, oh, I liked my stuff and now someone else liked it too. And if you get the confidence to do that and say to somebody, whereas maybe before you didn't want to, now you can
Mhm.
say, yeah, I'm writing. That's what I do. I
I'm a
write.
writer now. Yeah.
Right.
And that's all you really need to really get that drive to continue on and push yourself forward, is just somebody who you don't know, a stranger, saying that they appreciate your work because you can trust them. It's not a friend.
Right.
That's
Right.
fantastic.
And it's nice. It's nice when your husband tells you, like, oh, this is a great story. What else is he gonna say?
Yeah, yeah, he's certainly not going to dash your dreams with it. When you balling up paper and throwing them in the garbage, and he's coming along, pulling them out, saying, "No, you need to write this," which is, I think, is what happened with Carrie and Stephen King. I think it was Carrie. But
Yes.
so if your husband does that, he's going through your trash to make sure you're not throwing out that good ideas, then you'll really know that he's. But yeah, so I'm really glad that we could do this and help you on your journey and help you feel good about what you're doing and calling yourself a writer now. Is there anything else? That's all the questions I really have. Is there anything you want to say to other people who might be watching this video, your new adoring fan base?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I feel like if I could, not that I'm really in a position to be giving advice, but if I was going to give advice to anybody, I would just tell people just not to be, don't be so hard on yourself and just give yourself permission to write something. And nobody's going to read it if you don't want them to. Just write it, just do it. And then see and put it away and come back to it and tinker with it. And just because you put it down on paper, it's not written in stone. You don't have to leave it there. You can go back and revise it. So I just have to get started.
That's excellent advice. I think that's the same advice that a lot of like long-term professional authors would give as well. So you're definitely got the right wisdom there. Thank you so much for joining us today. Congratulations again on winning the prize. It's fantastic. And it was so great to have you here and talking with us. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed this very much.
Wonderful. Have a great day.
You too.